So welcome to our Cognos tutorial again, and today we'll get started with the Framework Manager. So to start Framework Manager, what you do is that you select Cognos. So what version we have is Cognos 8, and you select Framework Manager. So when you select that, you get this one. So first you click on this one to create a new project. So let's say we'll create our project name as test. And then we call our project name here as test. So here you give the name of the project, and here you give the location of the folder name. Now in case the folder doesn't exist, Cognos creates one. So once you click that, it will create the project, means it will create a set of files, and it will create, it will do the initialization part, and then we will get started with the creating the model. So I think we have some issues. I think I got logged out. So let me restart the Framework Manager. Okay. So first thing is to, once you get connected with the Framework Manager, the first thing is you have to connect your database, and then you will get all the information extracted from the database. So let's select the data source, and then we say next. I think we have I think my session got timed out, so I probably have to restart it. So let me restart the Framework Manager. So I started the Framework Manager again, and let me create a new project. So we say test 1. Oops. I click something by mistake. Okay, so we call it, let's say, test 1, and we say okay. So here you choose the language. So English is our default language. And then we select the data source. Now here you have to create a new data source because I don't have an existing one. So here this is a wizard which will walk you through a set of steps to create a new data source. So here again, just to repeat what we are trying to do, we are trying to connect to our SQL Server database and get started. So we say test 1 and say next, and here you choose SQL Server native client for a SQL Server database. Now, depending on your situation, you may have to choose different if you are for Oracle, then you probably would choose Oracle client, and then you can use the default gateway, and then you can select next, and then here you choose your server name and the database name. So in our particular case, we have I think our server name is something like DevSQL, or since it's local, so the database is in the local box, so we choose localhost, and we choose database name. Our database name is test, or I think it's test 1. Let me check. So I'm checking the database name to verify. So our database is test 1. So we choose test 1, and then other options you can leave them default. In particular, here you choose no authentication. I think it's IBM Cognos 8 service credentials. think that's what it is. So and then you can click test connection, and then you test. So this will verify that whether you can connect to the database successfully. So it's still testing. Sometimes it may need a little time. So it says succeeded, so that means our test went through fine. So now let's try to this. You don't have to really select anything, you just do finish. So it will connect your, so here you have been able to connect the data source fine. So the next step would be to connect to the database using that data source and then choose the tables. So now it shows that we have connected to the database, which is test1, and then we have our tables under DBO, which I showed you the last time, and we select the tables which we need. So we select all the 4 tables. Now, as you see, it has other options called views, synonyms. Depending on a situation, you may have to use them. So for example, if you have some probably views, you can for which your reports are based on, you can select them, and then you do next. And then in our particular case, we don't want to import. Depending on the situation, you may import or may not import the primary or foreign keys. So one of the strategies sometimes people do is that they don't import any keys from the database. They define all the relations within the Cognos or within the framework manager. So anyway, we don't have any keys defined, so it doesn't matter in our case. So in this particular case, it is now importing the Cognos metadata structure. Okay, so it has imported. Now it has we have created a data source. As you see here, it has test1. Now we have also created our basic model. So as you see here, we have got different what you call query subjects. So in Cognos, the tables are called query subjects, which is a typical symbol like this, as you see here. And if you see, these are also the things what is called. So query subjects has this sort of icon. Query item, which is actually essentially a column, is of this item. Then there is this called data source. So let me choose. So this is a data source. Now there are other different types. So for example, as you see, there is a little L here. I'm not sure if the screen is magnified enough so that you can identify. But here, if you see, this is a L. L is actually stands for measure. So for example, and we'll get to those concepts later on. But for example, your agent ID, as you see, it's called a fact. Now by default, it has assumed a fact. Now sometimes Cognos does that. If it sees a number, the default data type as if it is a data type as number, it will show fact. But it is, in our particular case, this is an identifier. Now you may be wondering what are these identifier, facts, and all this. Now if you remember from our first video, we had our sales agent table connected with the sales table. So our facts are actually the sales data, which is the volume, the sales amount, the date, and etc. Now if the sales table is connected with the agent table with the agent ID column, then agent ID becomes an identifier. The name is an attribute. The region ID is again an identifier. So you may have to change this things. Now manager ID is again an identifier. See, the reason Cognos interpret these as facts because it just went by the column type. So if it says it's a number, then it by default sometimes it puts a puts a fact. So let's go to the sales table. Okay, so sales table we have ID, which is a um, again an identifier. So let's fix that. So I'll continue with the next video because the